What do I think about Dragonflight? It's outstanding. It's the best expansion ever. There's not even really, I can't ever remember anything that's even remotely close to this. And I think it's really important to say that and then give you context as to why, because it's not just a good expansion, but it's also something that both Blizzard and us should learn from. We should learn some lessons here, both parties involved, because the differences are staggering. It's not just good, it's also very smart and it's very well made with everything in the game put together. And that is probably the key difference here between expansions. Like, I've had my variety of likes and dislikes from every expansion, but I've always generally really enjoyed them. Like Shadowlands. I made a whole video about that a month and a half ago, and I absolutely love Shadowlands. It's still an incredible expansion, even looking back on it. But Dragonflight is just so much better that it's like hard to even like I can't even imagine playing anything but it right now. Like even, I have a big affinity towards classic and early products, and I could see myself going back there and stuff. And even that, it's like, well, that's it. I'm never playing that again. You know what I mean? So it's kind of sad, just how, well, it's not even sad, really. It's just kind of staggering how much better this version is than every other version. And I guess what's sad about it is why did it take them this long to do any of these things? Because it seems so obvious now that we have it. So I want to tell you about why the expansion is so good, in my opinion, and you can give yours as well. Because I don't even know. I mean, this is obviously an opinion, but I think this is something a lot of people are going to agree with, especially if they have seen it themselves. So let me tell you about some of my favorite things so far in Dragonflight. In Dragonflight, the talents. Number one, I predicted this like 7 months ago. I was in midst of Turn of Scythe when it came out. I remember doing it. I was on stream. I said this is going to be my favorite feature of any expansion, and it absolutely is. The talents are just going to be this evergreen, perfect thing to explore new classes and, all this stuff with, right? So, what does it really help? What's the best thing about having multiple classes, right? Like, what do you when you really want to play a lot of classes? What do you want? You want an accessible level schema. You want, good content that you could play and pick up and play at any time on these alts, and you don't want any huge barriers to entry, right? Well, guess what? Dragonflight does all three of those. Massively improved leveling experience, like with lowered speed. The 50 to 60 has been added to Chromie time, so you can do that anywhere you want. The 60 to 70 has been made into the adventure mode, which is outstanding. There's so many different ways to level. You can even level through professions, which we'll get into in a second. And it's just like way more approachable to level a character now. You can literally do it. I mean, Cop has now done it in under 20 hours played, and that is not even on a character he is his main. I can level the character right now, and it could be done before reset tomorrow. That's insane. You know what I mean? And that really gets you into the interest of exploring these characters because now you don't feel like there's any reason you shouldn't. And then again, the max level whole all friendly thing, I don't really have much stake in this argument, but when you have great classes, you want them to be encouraged to be played. So those two things go hand in hand. You know what I mean? Like if you had great classes in an expansion where there was lots of barriers to entry, then people would play them less and the talents would be less used. And if you are going to invest in a lot of alt-friendly systems or remove a lot of things that were a barrier to entry to making alts at max level, but you have BFA classes or something that hasn't been historically great, what's the point of doing it? Who really wants to play that many alts at that point? So it's like, oh my god, that's genius. That's the core thing that's going on here with this expansion. And you could look at everything. Okay, move on. Dragon riding, absolutely outstanding. I love the system of like, if you can get at the right launch point, you will go infinitely far. You'll never be out of charges. I love the glyphs, the exploration, although it's sad that you'll only literally never do them again for the rest of your time playing WoW. It was a really fun thing to do the first time. But traveling around the world is not really something that matters, right? Like if you're going back to like WoD or something like that, where this whole argument against flying came out, it just didn't really matter. It was to get treasures and that was it. There was nothing to travel for. But now in Dragonflight, we have, an immensely, the big one is, I would say, gathering professions, to be honest, an immensely improved gathering system. So, like, this is a really big part of the expansion. The professions situation goes hand in hand with dragon riding, right? Like, if you have amazing benefits to gathering professions, but you don't have a flying mount, then you're like substantially limited to where the nodes could be, and you can't put them in crazy cool places like in these zones where they're like on mountaintops and like little rock structures. You can't do that without dragon riding, right? How about the races, the dragon riding races? These things are insane. They're really complicated. They're really well tuned too, I would say. Like they're hard to get a gold on some of these races. It's like you got to work. I think that's really good, really healthy for the game. uh, you know, just the sizes of the zones again. Like how many people have been saying like, oh, the zones are getting smaller, and they kept doing this thing. It was like really a Suramar thing where it was like this really, really, really dense zone. Like it was pretty big zone, Suramar, but it was so dense. Like it was every pixel of it had something that you could do for some quest or some relevancy, that it was almost like I found it, especially those first few weeks of Legion, it was overwhelming. It was like, oh, there's too much stuff here. Those mana nodes and all that, it was like there was just a lot in that zone. But so now they can make a zone like Azure Span, which is huge, massive, massive, wide zone. Like even when you enter Azure Span, there's probably more to the left of your entrance point than there is in like a zone like Bastion, right? For leveling and for content in general. It doesn't really matter, even if you are max level. There's still so much in these zones now, but they don't have to pack it together. And that's also because of dragon riding. You know what I mean? Because now the zone could be massive without it feeling like getting from one side to the other takes 10 minutes. And it's just, you can go on and on with these things, man. Everything plays in together. You know what I mean? How about reps? Reps are outstanding. They put the new renown system into reps, and I don't necessarily think that had that big of an impact, but all of a sudden you see a whole different approach to reps. Now we can get a lot of the renown just from leveling, just from literally just doing world quests, like quests out in the world, not even world quests. So then that makes, exploration of the rep more interesting. And then you have reps that are just basically like 7 or 8 different ways you can attain them. And now people are suddenly spending a lot more time in the world. And then, when you're out there, you're also mining, you're also dragon riding, you're also exploring everything. Like it's all there together. And there's really only been one thing I did that I didn't enjoy. And it was that Cobalt rep. And guess what? It has freaking like Torghast powers in it. It's like, the one thing, the one like straight up just nose to the plow grind, you know what I mean? Something that I had really never. When I got told about that, I'm like, well, I'm not doing that. And then I saw the ring, and I'm like, here's that mandatory stuff coming back, right? And it was awesome. It was great. It wasn't that fun, but it was a lot better than a regular grind. It was just get those powers and just mess around. It was really interesting. So they've got it, man. They've got it. And professions. And let's say for sure, professions are actually the thing that that weren't in the pre-patch that I'm the most happy with right now. And I would have to say that unfortunately blacksmithing isn't been that hasn't lived up to my love of the profession in the past. I'm a big, big fan of blacksmithing, and someday there will be a video series on this channel of me doing all the content in Classic as a blacksmith, because there is a lot of it. I was really hoping for more profession-specific content, like in Classic, where there would be, quest lines for blacksmithing. Now, maybe it's early days still, we'll see. There was a good amount of profession, like general stuff, and that's great. It was really fun, and I really enjoy it. And you can do all that while leveling now. So if you are going to level, one of the ways that this works with all the other systems is that it actually is encouraging you to level up with the profession now. Whereas in the past, it used to be a complete waste of time, right? Like You'll never make any impact on the profession while you're leveling in Shadowlands, so don't even bother picking it up. But now you can actually level the character with the profession. I got a level and a half last night from leveling leatherworking on my shaman, and that was awesome. The shaman is now level 60 leatherworking, and that was just me leveling it. That's as high as my actual blacksmithing, my main is. But I think leatherworking is a lot easier to level. But anyway, Yeah, you can get experience with it now. There's obviously, if you're out there skinning the mobs, then that's going to help you get the experience, you know. But if you're out there doing mining and herbalism, you could also get experience from doing those things. So you're basically getting experience from the herb node, then turning the herb into a potion that's going to give you more experience. It's just like, I mean, how this is insane. How did it take them this long to do all these things? And I'm going to tell you why, because they had a different approach to what the game was. And we're finally getting back to the actual roots of the game. This is what it should have been from Classic. Should be just TBC. Because like this is the expansion, the concept of this expansion is what TBC and Wrath should have been. But I don't know what happened at the company at this point. But it's clear that whoever made Classic did not make TBC and Wrath. And I think, they tried their best and they did a great job and obviously laid a foundation for many, many years to come. But they immediately started to compromise on some of the things that made Classic great. And that's exploration of the world, professions being like a core identity of your character, right? Like the RPG element of your character as an identification layer. And then of course, having a very unique class system, right? And so even though Classic had that, TBC expanded on it, I do think it started to go in the wrong direction. And so this is back to that. We're finally 18 years ago, we did something that I think was the reason people fell in love with World of Warcraft at one point. And now we are finally re-exploring that. We're not worried about only max level players. We're not worried about only dungeons and raids. We're actually spending time on world content. They made reps better. They made exploration better. They made mining better, urban, all these things that you would do out in the world. They made them more fun, more engaging. And the absolute pinnacle of it to me, I'll tell you my favorite thing about everything that I've talked about so far. The best combination of two things, okay? In blacksmithing, in Classic, in order to make, well, first of all, blacksmithing is always unique in this way because in order to make any gear, you have to be at an anvil. Now, the game has changed in a way where getting back to your capital city is extremely easy, so nobody ever really probably crafts outside of a city. But in the past, there used to be little places that are around the world that you could use an anvil. Like there'd just be an anvil in the middle of nowhere where you could use one. There's one still in Mulgore. I always have a little fond. It always gets me whenever I see it. It's actually by the goblins in Mulgore if you ever do the starting zone. But anyway, there is always that. Blacksmithing is always unique from that. I wish leatherworking was more like that, but all the professions have something like this now, where you have to go to a place to craft something. Now, I don't know how you guys feel about that. I've talked to a few people who really dislike that. And I think alchemists, I haven't really explored alchemy. I was going to level it, but then they disabled it basically. So I got to still get on that. But yeah, a lot of people probably don't love that, but in alchemy and classic, there was a little table that you had to use to make flasks, and there was only two of them in the game. There's only one of them in the game at launch, and it was in Skolamance. That was a dungeon. So in order to make the best material, whatever the best consumable possible, you had to be in a dungeon to do that. I love that. That is just peak world building. That's the best RPG element that World of Warcraft can offer. And we have it again here in Dragonflight. And not only do we have it, like, oh, you need to use a table, but for blacksmithing, in order to make my epic blacksmithing hammer, which I did on stream, I had to go to a specific forge to make that item. And that just fills me with such just glee, just absolute glee. I adore that. I absolutely love that. That is my favorite part of it's the best example of all these things culminating because you put in this strong rep driven world content, right? Because that area that I have to go to is the Rathian rep, one of the best places to get gear right now. I spent a ton of hours there already. That's where the pattern drops for both of the things you need to make the item in the first place. You know what I mean? And then there's this giant, like crazy looking forge there. Now, were there better locations for this? I do think so. I thought I knew where it was going to be, and it actually is not where I thought it was going to be. The only thing about the classic version is that it has a lot more power to it because it took you to Black Rock Mountains. You actually had to go into Black Rock depths to create this. So yeah, okay, now it's not Black Rock Depths that area, that's for sure. But hey, you know what? It's really great, and I love seeing that for professions. That is the ultimate. Because listen, so now if I want to craft that, you might think like, oh, I got to go out there. That's a chore, right? But it doesn't feel that way at all because to get from Valdrakken to there takes like 2 minutes with dragon riding. Valdrakken's so much higher, and that's another thing that's great about just level design of an expansion is oh, I mean, I could talk about a whole nother 30-minute video on this. But anyway, just the level design of this expansion really encourages you to use dragon riding well. So you don't even have to go to the top of the city. I was thinking taking the portal up to the top of the city and then flying anywhere in the world would be the way to do it. You don't even have to do that. You literally just launch from the city and you could go anywhere else on the continent, especially outside of Valdrakken, like outside of Theldraszus. So anyway, yeah, you can literally get from there to the Rathion thing in like 2 minutes, I'm pretty sure. And even if it's, I don't even know how long it is because it's just fun. It's just fun to use dragon riding and to see my character just soar and these awesome. Oh, and then you have the gorgeous vistas that we've been taking screenshots of and put in the Discord. My God, man, everything about it. I have yet to see anything that isn't fun. And this is because it's not got one layer of fun like Shadowlands, right? Like to go and do the Maw. You know, this is the big thing, right? That was the big launch thing, right? To go and do the Maw's dailies and the chores there, whatever. It had one layer of fun, and that was the actual reward. Like nobody really liked that zone. I mean, I hate to say it. I don't know what they were thinking. I had some respect for the concept of no mounting. I like that idea. It just didn't really work because of the way the zone was designed. Everybody just used a lot of weird shit to get to navigate it. At the end of the day, yeah, I don't know. If it took place in Zareth Mortis, you probably would have a better opinion of it. But if it's just such a dreary, poorly drawn zone, not the way you want to start an expansion. You know, Azure Span, these zones that we have now, those are the things you want people spending time in. You do not want spending people time. You don't want people spending time in this dreary zone, streaming this 24/7, watching anybody who comes to I think this is important, right? You don't want somebody coming in to see if the expansion is fun and then they see this zone that has no color to it and it's just terrible music and everything about it is grueling, you know what I mean? And I get it. That's what it actually is physically, but they I don't know, man. That's okay. So anyway, that's important to understand that there's so many layers of why things are good right now. And this is something that we as a community, but also Blizzard needs to understand and learn from. I don't know how this expansion got made. I really don't. Because, from all intents and purposes, it seems like they were behind from the get-go on Shadowlands. Shadowlands was late launching. The first season was longer than they expected to be by a little bit. And pretty much everything after that was a little bit longer than they expected, to the point where they actually added a whole new season 4 concept. So I don't know when the page turned from them working on Shadowlands to working on this, but there's a lot of speculation about how that gets done. And one of the key ones is that they have multiple teams working on expansion simultaneously, and the better team is the one that did Dragonflight. And I don't know about that. I don't know anything about that. I saw no indication that that was ever true. In fact, I've been told explicitly that it is not true by people who do work at the company, but it's hard for it to I can't understand how it could not be true because how is it possible that you were behind the entire time on Shadowlands and then all of a sudden you have this expansion, which is clearly just it's just a masterpiece. I mean, it's really just a masterpiece. Everything about it is amazing. Everything feeds into each other so well, and you have art and music that just absolutely like if you're laying there thinking this is a great expansion, but you're not really too sure yet, and then you hear these musical tracks. I mean, some of the songs that are playing, it's like, dude, the music has always been good in WoW. How does it keep getting better? How I don't understand how music creation works, I guess. Because I hear a song from the 70s in like, Led Zeppelin or something like that, some of my favorite musical producers ever. And there's nothing like that now, dude. There's not a thing like that now. I can't find any music that moves me the way music from the 70s and 80s does in my context of real life music. But somehow in WoW music, it just keeps getting better. It's just like every single expansion gets better music wise. So I can't say enough about it. Leave your thoughts. I'm very interested in having a comment, a good discussion in the comment section. So How many things have you guys seen that kind of play into each other? Because I think that is the best thing right now. And, we'll see with Mythic Plus, because obviously, if I do have one concern, it is the longevity of these things. The content that we're describing isn't going away. So if you enjoy it now, really, you might enjoy it for the rest of the expansion. It's probably not going to be that enjoyable, though. And so eventually we're going to be doing the same old thing, kind of raid logging and just doing keys over and over and over again. So what will it look like then? I think they've already taken steps to make that a little bit more interesting with the seasonal effects, the seasonal concept in general, with 4 old and 4 new. Two of my favorite dungeons ever returning, so I'm looking forward to the season a lot. But we'll see. I don't know what that's going to be like. And in a few months, we may be back to being, miserable, doing a terrible dungeon over and over again. I can't predict that that would happen, but it could, very, very possible. But there's always going to be just get back to the world content. There's always going to be that there. There's always going to be that where there wasn't that in previous expansions, and there really hasn't been. I mean, I would go all the way back to MOP probably, and then before that, probably Classic, where there's just actual world content out there that I really did want to do. And, that's not really existed in the game. So we will see, guys. I don't know. I'm going to tell you right now, dude, this expansion has really made me rethink the stream content. And mostly because of the whole lack of player progression thing. So I'm very worried about that. I'm a person who loves spending time on my Death Knight, and even though I'm giving an absolute rave review to Dragonflight, that is the one thing that is kind of weird right now. I don't really feel like I have anything I want to do on my Death Knight. There's a lot of things I could do, right? And that's kind of the issue here is all of these things you were supposed to do are now gone, right? Like these mandatory things like the Maw and Torghast, they don't exist anymore. So that's hours that I would have spent on my main that doesn't exist anymore. So now I'm kind of like, what am I supposed to do? Like I just fly around and enjoy the zones, and that's about all I do on the character anymore. Get some mining nodes and sell them. And so eventually that's going to come back and not work for me. Like that's not at that point anywhere close to that point yet. But eventually, a couple months from now, I'm going to be bored and there's not going to really be any progression to make on my character. And pugging, especially, is probably going to make that tough. But they also took, a chance to try to fix that with making Mythic Plus 20 the highest key now. So hopefully that will be more approachable and a longer term power grind, to get characters up to that point. So then you can play alts. I don't really like playing alts, to be honest. It's kind of all right. Like, I don't love it. I don't hate it. It's fine, I guess we can level some new Death Knights, but I always come back to leveling challenges, man. I have so many things I might want to do with world content. So let me know what you guys' thoughts are. Thanks for watching. We'll be back to streaming this week. We got I want to do zeros on all these characters I've leveled, and then we'll probably take some weekends off. My mother is finally retiring, so we're gonna spend some time with her on the weekend, and I will not be streaming next weekend. But yeah, yeah, this has just been such a great. And then Christmas, Christmas. It's crazy, right? Dragonflight better than Christmas.